9th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this day and thanks for the many blessings you've given each and every one of us here in the city of Troy. We ask that you continue to bless us and be with us throughout this evening's city council meeting, where we work hard to work in the best interests of the city. We ask that you be with each of our residents who are joining us here this evening in chambers or watching at home, and of course throughout the entire city. Always be with our public safety officers, police and fire, EMS, our DPW workers, all of those that work so hard to keep us safe. We ask that you especially be with those in the community who need your help in whatever fashion that may be. And please always be with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The January 9th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting is officially called to order, and I'll ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. We have no certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. We have no carryover items or public hearings. Takes us to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I don't see that anybody has signed up, so there's no need for council or administration reply. No postponed items this evening, so we move right into regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. Mayoral appointments are first. There are none this evening, and there are no city council appointments either. So we move on to I-2, board and committee nominations. Mayoral nominations are first. I do have a couple. I'd like to move the nomination or renomination of John Howard Adams to the Board of Review for the term expiring January 31st, 2026.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the nomination of John Howard Adams to the Board of Review for the term expiring January 31st, 2026. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up, to the Downtown Development Authority, I'd like to nominate Padma Kupa as an at-large member for the term expiring September 30th, 2026.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve the nomination of Padma Kupa to the Downtown Development Authority for the at-large term expiring September 30th, 2026. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. That concludes mayoral nominations this evening. It's my understanding there are no city council nominations this evening. So we'll move on to I-3, which is a request for closed session. I will move I-3, be it resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by 15.267H MCL 15.243G as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga, that we approve I-3 request for closed session as printed in the agenda packet and read into the record. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. At the conclusion of this agenda public business, we will adjourn and head in, I'm not adjourned, we will recess and head into the closed session where we'll eventually adjourn in there. Next up is I-4, bid waiver, AccuTab tablets, and that'll be introduced by Brian Gould, our Recreation Director. Good evening, Brian.
Evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you is a bid waiver to continue to use Aquatic Source as our vendor for our chlorine AccuTab pellets for the Troy Community Center and the Troy Family Aquatic Center. They are the sole source provider of this product, and with the volatility of the market, they will only guarantee the quoted price through December 31st, 2023. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, because I swim in the pools quite frequently. I noticed the pricing is more for TFAC than it is for the community center. And TFAC, of course, is just seasonal, a couple of months out of the year. Is
Right.
that because there are more pools, more water flowing, and also?
Yeah, the body of water as well as the sun burns the chlorine away. So the indoor pool uses very minimal compared to the outdoor pool, even though it is a shorter amount of time.
Any other questions? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-4 bid waiver Accutab tablets as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Cronga, that we approve I-4 bid waiver Accutab tablets as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. I-5 is budget amendment and standard purchasing resolution 4, Omnia Partners Cooperative Purchasing Contract, golf course maintenance equipment. And again, we have Brian Gould, our Recreation Director.
This item is a budget amendment and cooperative contract purchase for 5 pieces of golf equipment for the Sanctuary Lake and Sylvan Glen golf courses. The Omnia Partners Cooperative contract will be utilized, and Spartan Distributors will provide the equipment for an estimated total cost of $197,701.14, less the trade-in amount of $8,000 for the replaced equipment. This purchase will also require a budget amendment of $6,639.78 to the Sanctuary Lake Golf Course Capital General Equipment Fund and $15,061.36 to the Sylvan Glen Golf Course Capital General Equipment Fund. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-5 budget amendment and standard purchasing resolution 4, Omnia Partners Cooperative Purchasing Contract, golf course maintenance equipment as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-5 budget amendment and standard purchasing resolution 4, Omnia Partners Cooperative Purchasing Contract, golf course maintenance equipment as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is I-6, 2023 City Council meeting schedule, and that'll be introduced by Bob Bruner, our Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council last held a joint meeting with the Troy Board of Education back in 2018, and it was suggested that we schedule a meeting in 2023. The Board of Education, the City Council scheduled your 2023 meetings back in November. The Board of Education hasn't actually formally adopted its meeting schedule for 2023 yet, so this was a little more difficult to finagle a date than usual, and I usually try to provide you with more than one option. But what we have is a date Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023, which is Tuesdays are the day that the Board of Education normally meets, so this is an off Tuesday for them, and obviously City Council meets on Mondays. So that's the proposed date for now, but if that doesn't work for City Council, we can go back to the well and try again.
Thanks, Bob. It is my understanding that at least one of us is unavailable on that date with a previously scheduled work obligation. And I think ideally it would be best if we could all be there, which I know makes it very difficult to schedule, especially because of our inability to have too much dialogue amongst ourselves about this kind of stuff. But I think in light of that fact, my preference would be to send it back to you to see if we could find maybe another option or a couple options. Maybe the school board might want to weigh in as well. I don't know how much input they've had at this point. I do think the joint meeting's a great idea. It'll have been 5 years since the last one, and I think the last one was a good meeting, as I recall. But I don't know if that's okay with everybody to seek alternate dates, if possible, not to put too much extra work. I know scheduling's tough.
No, well, now that they have published a draft meeting schedule, which includes this meeting, by the way, on the 23rd that isn't going to be scheduled, but now that they have a draft schedule, I know which Mondays and Tuesdays we don't have regular meetings. So there's 6 options, so we'll go from there.
Okay. Appreciate that. Good. All right. Next up is I-7, 2022 City of Troy Advance Report, and that'll also be introduced by Bob Brunner.
I would like to introduce James Vitrino, the facilitator, co-facilitator for the 2022 Advance, and you've already received the report in the agenda packet. James has a brief presentation to deliver.
Hi, James.
Hello.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I'm before you this evening to deliver the report that's in your packet. More so if you have any questions about the report or if I can provide any clarity in the report, I'm happy to answer those. As Bob mentioned, I do have a brief couple of slides, more for the public because it'll look very familiar from those of you that were either at the retreat, at the Advance, or have reviewed the report. But including the public in that day is something important. And I'll stress that hopefully members of the public have had an opportunity to review the packet that includes the report or the report is made available to them. The report attempted to balance comments from members that were there, along with some recommendations that were interpretive on my end, and hopefully we clearly delineated the two. But it is important because it is not a regular meeting day that the public have access to some notes, as detailed as we can make them during a several-hour session. So if we want to go ahead to that first slide. Oh, just use this? Am I pointing? All right. It's the arrow, right? Oh, I did that, right? Sorry. This was a graphic that we used and tried to introduce the day on keeping ourselves in the 40 to 30,000 foot level. If somebody says they're looking at something at the 30,000 square foot, we were really talking about strategic goals and trying to prioritize actions. What you do at this meeting on a consistent basis is really work closer to the 10,000, 20,000 foot level. Sometimes you meander into the 30 to 40, but we really tried to stay at the higher level during the day. Go ahead and give me the next. Thank you. This was another graphic that we tried to open with, and it was really in the intent of the day for the public's information to bring staff and the city council members closer. Often staff is doing daily challenges that they have to take care of, and then they come and report in public session where they're just providing, as you did this evening, budget changes or very high-level things that are happening or reports in reaction to a public question, as opposed to having conversation with the elected officials and the actual day-to-day folks that are involved in the activities. That was the other goal of the day. Next slide. The day was split up into 2 parts. The first was more detailed in that 30,000 foot level, and there were 4 areas that we felt in preparing for the facilitated advance that the council members and the staff were prepared to have deeper conversations. So not quite the strategic, but more so operational or close to operational. I'm going to try it. No. The first of those was the library. And what we did in the report was provide some of the notes that were taken. This was done in a round-robin session where council members got to meet in small groups with the staff that are most closely responsible for these activities. We provided some notes in the report, but then we also tried to suss out from those notes some suggested follow-ups for staff out of the report. And these were not at all agreed to necessarily the day of. of. These, again, are part of our facilitation effort to say this is what we think we heard in terms of direction. This is now should be reviewed in detail by staff and ultimately report back to City Council as to if this is what you're going to do as your next steps as part of your fiscal year planning for next year. On the library, it seemed clear that some community engagement was necessary in order to bridge the difference between the millage funding that is receiving and expected to be received and the actual costs of some of the projects that are on the horizon. Next slide, please. Similarly, we talked about City Hall, which was a carryover from last year's advance, and really the re-engagement of a firm to take a look at the needs of the City Hall. That is something that I know the city was progressing towards, got to some conclusion, but not full conclusion, and the pandemic had a say in that timing. So that was really a lot of the questions were generated. We need more information that would be of a technical nature in order to move forward with some decisions there. Next slide. The Troy Family Aquatic Center, that one is one that, again, similar to the library in that the recommendation would be to involve a community member committee, but different from the library, it's much more open slate in terms of what to do. The library has a clear gap that it needs to fill. The Troy Family Aquatic Center has a clear gap, but I didn't sense during the conversations of the facilitation that there was a clear which way folks wanted to go. There was a lot of gathering of information, and now there's some community input that's needed beyond the surveys that the city has undertaken. Surveys are great. It gives you very high-level information, but having community input on a very much more conversational is the recommendation that the facilitators brought out of that item. Next item. Last is we took a look at recreation senior services as part of one of those small group discussions. And really, a senior communication service plan to City Council was something that folks seemed interested in during the conversation. And some policy direction, and this is something that the staff should frame during your budget process discussion, in terms of the cost recovery that is expected in some of the services. That was a question that seemed to come through as part of that small group. Again, I want to reiterate both to the public and to City Council and to staff, we don't at all intend to overstep where we are as facilitators. We want to provide you some next steps that you could consider. These considerations may say that was really appreciative, but we need something different and go forward in a different direction. Again, the intent is not to apply any perceived pressure or actual pressure that these are next steps that should be taken, but rather a gathering of what we had heard. Next slide. The second half of the retreat was really focused more broadly on aligning goals and resources. You had done a citizen survey, and you had several pre-advanced presentations from the management team on revenue, expenses, and fund balance. Next slide. Again, this, I apologize, the print's going to come off small, but this is in the report. Again, trying to listen to that conversation and then bring forward some policymaker positions aligned with suggested staff actions. I won't go through these in detail, but we felt it was really important at the conclusion of that conversation to have some concrete recommendations, particularly for staff rather than the elected officials, to consider and bring back to you as suggested next steps. That part of the conversation was really led mostly by the elected officials providing comments, which is what we asked for. Hearing those, we've offered some recommendations for staff to consider and bring back information to you so you can continue to move forward with aligning resources, with your aligning resources conversation. Next slide. The great pie chart, right? 95% of people thought it was okay. That is good. We're happy. Sorry for the couple of folks that did not find it so useful, but 95 is a pretty good score on any test, and so we appreciated the opportunity to facilitate for those hours and engage staff and the elected officials as best we could during the advance. We provided a lot of other feedback that we received during a post-advance survey that we're going to learn from, whether it's our opportunity to work with you or not. This is always really good feedback for whoever has the opportunity to work with you for the next advance. Next. questions. Again, that was hopefully the right balance between going really fast and giving you enough. And again, I really encourage the public to take a look at the full report. It's not very long, it's about 25 pages, and you'll see some verbatim comments in there as well as some recommendations from the facilitators. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, James. That was about 8 hours synthesized down to 5 or 6 minutes, so that's good. Any questions from council? This is not an action item, it's just a report, but questions, necessary comments, thoughts? No? Yeah, Ann? Or Councilmember Erickson Gall?
Thank you, Mayor. James, I just wanted to thank you and your team for facilitating that meeting. I thought it was really well done, and I wanted to echo some of the comments that I saw in the report about how much better that was than the previous year. I did think we got a lot of great feedback, a lot of great, as you mentioned, a lot of opportunities for staff and the elected officials to actually talk through issues. And I thought it was a very productive day. So I would have been in the very, very useful column.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Gall. Additional quiet groups. Now, I'm going to kind of echo what Councilmember Erickson Gall just said. As somebody who's been through several iterations of these, from the very odd to the okay, this was definitely probably the most useful for me personally, and I think that a lot of that credit goes to you, James, and your team, because it certainly was well facilitated. I really felt that there was a good balance of everything we needed, and curious who the 5% who said not so useful, but we'll deal with that later. But honestly, it was, for me, and I know that for several that I've talked to, it did give good guidance, and I love the report and the ability we now have to synthesize that, and especially city staff, because obviously the day-to-day comes down to them, and
Absolutely.
I think your recommendations are good ones, and I look forward to continuing the process and using that good information. So thank you. And,
Thank you.
It's always good when you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed. Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Gall?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here on a consent agenda item this evening, all have been approved. Next up are memorandums and future council agenda items. K1 is an announcement of a public hearing. January 23rd, 2023, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2023 funds. That concludes memorandums and future council agenda items. There's nobody signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, so again, no need for reply. There are no council referrals this evening, so we move on to the reports. Any comments on the reports this evening? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to thank city staff for O2A, the Michigan Green Communities report. I'm glad that we're going to try to complete some of these actions in 2023. It's great to see. I know that I really do want to support forming a new committee devoted to this. Personally, as an engineer, I'm very passionate about climate change and green energy. So I'm planning the next meeting or two to maybe present some kind of action item that we can act on, whether to begin the process of forming the committee and we can bring it up to discussion. I'm not necessarily saying we have to act on it, but I want to have something formal written down, maybe similar to what other communities have done to start the conversation and be open to amend it and everything. But I don't have anything today for that, but maybe in 2 weeks or next month, I'll try to present something as a referral that we can change as we want, but just to have a formal discussion on that. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Any other comments or discussion on, well, how about O2A since we're there? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I had some questions for city management. Thank you for diving into that, the details, very, very helpful. So, and it was good to hear that there's a network as opposed to just the challenge. So you can join the network, and I think that, that's a fair kind of step forward. I think the clarification, is there any cost to join the network, A? And kind of, and it sounds like there's all these amazing resources that come to us, and how might those be shared? Is there going to be some kind of, way to forward those opportunities for us to take part?
Yeah, thanks for the question. For some reason, this seemed kind of harder to sort out than it should have been because of the way they talk about the challenge. So the Michigan Green Communities is the network, and we can all join the network. We can all go to the website and sign up and become a part of the network and receive information, that sort of thing. I think they're a little bit behind schedule right now because I applied to join the network in mid-December and haven't heard back yet. They have an actual human on the other side kind of moderating things because it's open to local government staff, elected officials, and that sort of thing. So, so individual council members and staff members are free to join the network. And then as we, another thing that wasn't immediately apparent, but they have a kind of 2 pages about getting started, where they have a list of, I think 15 items, and if you do any 10 of those 15, then you're bronze certified. And so that's how you get started. And one of the first ones is to establish an internal sustainability team, which I think as staff is really important to get our own ducks in a row before we try to engage community members and that sort of thing. So, the city or city staff and anybody else who wants to sign up can be a member of the network. We'll form that team, work on those items to get started during 2023, and then the challenge window opens in December if they follow past practice, where basically the challenge is say, okay, now tell us what you did last year. And it's kind of a reporting process where, but it's retrospective. So when they, had the big push, like, hey, join the challenge, it's like, well, join the network first and do the things, and then join the challenge and tell us what you did. So does that answer your question?
It does. And Bob, is it retrospective of that past calendar year?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like all the things, because I'm sure there are things that we've done maybe 2 years ago, 5 years ago. I would hope we'd still get to check the mark on those things.
Yeah, I think initially the first time we go through, we will get credit, so to speak, for things that we've already done. And that's why when I was looking at the material, and I forgot, it's like 143 different items or 127 action items, and I'm sure the city's done many of them over the years. But we have to take that first step of getting our internal team together with the appropriate staff to say, yes, we've done this and that sort of thing. So we believe we will get credit for certain types of things that you only do once and have been done. There are other things that are ongoing.
Excellent. And it sounds like if we want to access resources, it's best to just sign up ourselves, and then that would we'd hear about the webinars and events. I was speaking with the chairman of the Sustainability Committee in Sterling Heights, and he highly recommended this. It allowed him to attend, I don't know if that's the forum that's mentioned here, the Michigan Green Communities Forum, or if it's something Eagle puts on, a sustainability conference every year, and it allows you, it kind of pays for some members to be able to go, and highly recommended the opportunity to do that. So thank you. This has been very helpful.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig. Bob, I have a kind of a question, follow-up question. I think, well, it's not a follow-up question. It's a new thought altogether, but it's in relation to this. I'm hesitant to seek consensus on something because I know resources are always slim, but for a couple of meetings, we've talked a lot about the things we have done in the past in this city. Before I seek consensus to ask for a report on the things we've done, do you have already a plan of how you're going to get that information? Or I'm sure someone's been compiling things already, or at least looking into that. What would be the best and most effective way for us to kind of see, as well as the community? Because other than this, I know you're checking those boxes, but I don't know what that process is going to look like, the timeline. I don't want to wait till December of this year to find out which things we could check the box for, is my point.
Oh, yeah, so city staff is going to do it. We're going
All
to
right.
start off with the 15 action items and the getting started. Like I said, an important part of that is establishing the internal team of the people who know what's been done and what hasn't been done. So, I've talked to City Manager Miller about that, and, we don't need direction or anything from City Council. We're going to do that. And then, at some point, probably before December, we can have some kind of report back to City Council about what we found. But, as you alluded to, there are sometimes competing priorities and that sort of thing.
Right.
So this is on the to-do list and will be juggled along with, a lot of other to-dos.
Okay, I'm just thinking with the potential council referral coming and members of the public, and I just know that it's going to keep getting talked about here and in the community, and I just was hoping we can have, I don't know, I know a lot of work's been done, I don't have all that data. And
Let me put it this way. I think city staff would be smart to report to council sooner rather than later.
I would agree.
Okay.
Well,
So
we
we
can
will
probably leave it at that for tonight, and that'll be okay.
Yeah,
but-
we'll endeavor to do that sooner than
Okay.
later, so the community can gain more awareness about what's been done and what we are doing.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion on O2A? All right, so O2B,
Yeah,
I needed to, my reading of it is city administration would like direction or consensus from council to move forward with your recommendations relating to the alcohol policy for the Nature Center and the Historic Village.
So let me put it this way. The Historic Society, the Nature Society raised the question.
Okay.
So we wrote a memo and sent it to city council to raise the question, but I can't speak on the city attorney's behalf. We haven't discussed it internally. It was more of kind of heads up to city council that this issue has been raised.
Okay, because the last line was, city staff recommends amending the agreements to provide the city manager with the discretion to establish rules for alcohol consumption. Do you need us to agree with you? Or do we need to take a pause because the city attorney needs to weigh in a little more?
Mayor, the first time that I saw this was when it was in the packet. So unfortunately, I'd like an opportunity. There are some concerns. Obviously, right now, the agreements that we have in place prohibit them from having alcohol unless there is a license from the Liquor Control Commission.
Right.
They can get licenses from the Liquor Control Commission. There's also the ability for caterers to provide a liquor license as well. So there are some opportunities already for them to have alcohol and to use their facilities. So again, I would just like the opportunity to explore some of the potential ramifications for opening it up, and then also a slippery slope. Where does it go? Where's the next request? Where's the next facility that there's a request for? So, again, I like an opportunity to provide you with some of this information, and I do have some concerns about opening it up. But, ultimately, it is council's decision. But it can't be done unless and until there is an amendment to the current agreements.
I would love our city attorney to weigh in on something like this. I think we all would, so that sounds good to me. I am tentatively supportive of the concept, though, because I do think they could benefit from, alcohol sounds terrible, but the increased ability for certain events, and I know that that's been a struggle for them. But again, we rely on your legal opinion for these things as well. So, okay. Any other comments on any of the reports? There's not much left. All right, that takes us to council comments. New year, new council, I guess. All right. There's nobody signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. So we will then recess here and move into our closed session.